Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end, the series finale of our donut tutorial series. Not everybody makes it to the end. I think the last time I made this tutorial series, like if you looked at the number of views on part 1 versus the final part, it was like 4% of people actually made it right to the end, which is expected. I mean, I don't blame people. It's a lot. So seriously, pat yourselves on the back, as teachers in school used to say. Seriously, because it is hard work to learn. So congratulations. Now let's make that final animation, okay? Because we haven't rendered it yet. I explained all the different settings to render out an animation. Now we want to put it into a video file that we could upload to the internet and get some sweet likes from strangers on the internet. Now a lot of people make the mistake of going to their output settings and going, okay, well, I want to make a video file. Let's go output, file format. Movie. I want to make a movie. I'll make an AVI or something like that. Terrible idea. Never do that. For many reasons. One, if you happen to render it, finish it, and then the file was corrupted, all your rendering effort is gone. It's also sometimes impossible to pause it. You've got compression artifacts on top of it that are now built into it often. What else? How many other reasons do you need? That the frame rate is built into it. You can't change it. Terrible. You never want to do that. The way you do it, and the way that it has been done for animations forever, and will continue to be done, I'm sure, is to instead save it into individual image files, so like a PNG file, and then you take all of those, like 300 files, which is what you'd get because you have 300 frames, and then you compile that into one video file, which you can actually do inside of Blender. So that's what I'm going to show you. However, first, I want to take a few minutes because I mentioned that I could give some advice on how to improve your donut, because while I've been making this series, people have been uploading their videos and images to Twitter and tagging me. And I've also been looking at the Blender Donut subreddit, which, yes, is a thing. And there's a few like common mistakes, or I don't know, just things that I realized maybe I should have explained how to do that part better. Because it seems a lot of people have missed that or have got it wrong or something like that. So, for example, the biggest one that I kept seeing a lot of was a lot of people's sprinkles were like really small. So remember when we made these sprinkles, I just, I made some cylinders and then I scaled them down to an arbitrary value. And then, I just hit Control A and scale. Now, I just made that a little bit small. If yours was just slightly smaller than what mine was, you got this effect, which doesn't look like sprinkles. It looks like, I don't know, like iron fillings, or like someone shaved their beard. Like Takeshi 6ix9ine shaved his multicolored beard. It doesn't look like sprinkles, or it makes your donut look huge because of the ratio of the sizes. So you want to get the size right, okay? And just slight tweaks can have big effects for how it's going to look for your donut. So just play with it and don't copy values. Like, don't try to copy exactly what I've got here. Like, copy what makes sense for the size of your original torus, your original donut, because those values will always be different depending on what sizes you're working with. So just try to get the ratio right. And also like the ratio of this, like this cylinder. Some people's were like really thin. Oh dear, what was going on there? Like if you made it really thin like that, then yeah, it's the exact same problem. You end up with something that looks like a hair or something. So just try to play with it. Try and make it look good. You can also play with the colors in your shading tab, which is something that I briefly touched on. And it can make a big difference. I mentioned as a tip, you don't want to go for like uniform colors across it like this, because it just looks boring. Then it just sort of becomes like noise that your eyes is like, too many colors. As a rule, they say for like photography, you try to avoid having more than like 3 colors in a photo. So we've already broken the rule, but we can make it look interesting by not using too much like uniform across it. So you want to have one predominant color, which I'm going to go with purple. I think purple goes nicely with the pink. And then a little bit more blue than any other color, a little bit of yellow as well, like a bit more yellow to kind of like, it's kind of like a spark. It's kind of like a complementary accent color like that. And that looks a lot nicer than it did already. Not bad. The other big thing that you could do is, check that, the distance. Because again, if you copied this exact 0.004, that will be different if your donut was slightly bigger or slightly smaller. So some of them, the ones that I saw online, they look like there's like massive gaps between each of the sprinkles. And that just doesn't look right. So again, don't copy this value, copy the distance, what makes sense for yours. So is that that's pretty good. I'll make a 0.0045 for mine. And another thing that you can do that I forgot to mention, actually, you might remember that this node here defines the rotation of the sprinkles. So the Z axis, that's what these are, X, Y, Z. The Z axis is just spinning it around, on its like the middle of the each sprinkle's origin point. But you can see they're all perfectly flat on the donut, like they've been like laid by tweezers. Would never happen because some of the sprinkles would land like with a bit sticking up and half, sinking into the icing. So we could add that just by tweaking this X-axis here, just adding a little bit of randomization to the X-axis. And I might also just the other way as well, just spin it the other way. Actually, I don't know if like that would be the same as if I just added that value onto here. I don't know. But now you can see that they're just sticking up a little bit. And you get more interesting shadows across it because now that they're more raised. It also has the unintended effect of making the clipping not so noticeable. Because now when it's like, like in this case, they're no longer like resting directly with like mashing meshes. It looks like it's resting on top of it, which is kind of nice. So that's cool. There will always be intersections. Play with your seed value and try and find one that you think looks good. I think I actually had it right before. Maybe. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, now what were some other things? Because I did write a list. Oh, the animation. So that is another really big one. It was maybe something that, I mean, it makes sense to make a mistake on this because it is pretty easy to get wrong. But this part where it does that, if you want to get it to look like mine does, I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to get that whip, you have to make one of the handles so far extended that it won't go any further. Like you can see, like up until it reaches a point and then it just sort of like clips out and it won't be able to go any far. Like this one could, it would any far. I'm just throwing words around. This one could. You're just changing like where it happens in the animation, essentially. So I could make it happen a little bit earlier. Something like that. Let's move that one a little across. There we go. So I want it to like, ramp up and then go whip. Maybe that happens. Don't want to happen. Maybe a little bit further back. I mean, yeah, it depends where you want the actual like whip to occur, but you have to make sure, because I saw a few where it was just kind of going like, and it was like, oh, that seems unintended. Like it was not intended by the artist. It just seemed to have happened. But anyways, you play with that and try and, just slight changes in the handles can have a big effect on it. So, yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, another really big one. There's so many things that I've like changed now, but this is what happens. Like as you're working on something, you go and you come back to it the next day and then you revisit it with fresh eyes and you see so many things that could be improved and made better. And I noticed, I was playing around yesterday with like the fact that the sprinkles just kind of stop here, right? And we got a camera that's like looking out into the distance and they're just kind of like randomly stopping at a weird point. They could continue on much further if in the starting position of our sprinkles GeoNode system, and you can see I know that because I commented on it, which is good so that I can come back and easily find it. I can just take that Y value and just extend that all the way out there. The other one I wanted to do as well is I did actually think, originally I said like going from right to left, I like that. Now I kind of think it does look weird because most of the donut's actually facing to the left for most of the animation. So what I said before, I actually demonstrated in the tutorial and then I removed it. But if we wanted to do that effect, you'll remember that it's taking the frame value and then it's putting it into the X and the Z axis, so it goes down and also one direction. We could swap it around just for the X axis by duplicating this multiply node, putting it in here, and then this value here, if we make that a minus, anything in the minus range, it'll now go the other direction. And I also thought, going too far left to right just kind of feel a little bit silly. Let's go a little closer to the 0 range so that it's primarily falling downwards. And I do like that a little bit better. Yeah, okay. And then obviously I have to change, you then have to change your x-axis so that it starts at a point that logically makes sense. I think also the Z has to be increased a little bit so that at the end of the animation, you can't see any, gaps appearing on the sides of it. Because obviously it's not everywhere, it's just wherever we've defined it. So there to there. Yeah, that's pretty good. And obviously your density of your sprinkles can be changed here. I love the fact that with GeoNodes you can just add more density to it just for fun. Like it's just, yeah, you couldn't do it before with particles. And it was just so annoying, but Geometry Nodes is so much, at least that aspect is a lot more user-friendly to the artist. But yeah, anyways. Of course, one more thing also. I forgot to mention actually in the last part, depth of field, right? I showed you how to set your depth of field focus object. However, I didn't mention that it's the amount of depth of field is defined by your f-stop, which is this value here. So I think the default is like 5, and then these become like Christmas lights in the background. Like that is so blown out that they look like it's such large depth of field. So we're going to use a value which would make no sense. Like I don't think any camera goes this high, does it? But like 60. Most cameras I've ever used stop at like 22, but we have to go to such a high amount because the camera is so close to our donut that it has to be that high to see that far. But anyways, and the other thing I realize now, this is now intersecting with our sprinkle. So I'm going to move that all the way out the back. Let's increase the size of it. Let's put that to the side so that my rim light still works. And then I'll just increase the size of this. So, I mean, I could have just skipped this, but I wanted to show you that there's a lot of things you could tweak because it feels a shame to, put so much effort into making all this and then just like not try to polish it, just try and make it a little bit better. So I thought I'd just show you how I go about doing it. And honestly, like, as I said, I come back to it the next day and I'm like, oh man, why didn't I spot that before? Like that would improve this thing. And you only spot it with fresh eyes by taking a break. So let me check my list. That is everything. Cool. All right. Now let's finally do our animation. So we want to render out individual image files, as I explained. So that is defined in your output settings. So you want to choose your folder where you want to put your individual file, your files. So you're going to get like a folder that looks like this at the end of it, okay? So make sure that you create a new one wherever it is you want to save it. I generally create a frames folder in the same, like the root directory of like my blend file. And then I create another subfolder with a number, like 6. Because evidently, always, you end up needing to do it again because of a problem or you want to improve it somehow. So I just find like numbering it just is easier to find. Anyways, so you do that and then hit accept. Okay, now the file format, this is the important one. You might already know the difference between a JPEG and a PNG. JPEG will have compression artifacts. It'll be a lot smaller in size. It's good for the web, but it'll have compression artifacts. You don't want to put that in any sort of rendered animation. It's just not a good idea. PNGs is better. You can get lossless. Always getting confused. Lossy or lossless. So you won't have any compression artifacts. However, it is slower to save for compression. It also doesn't have correct alpha. It's got a map path instead. Doesn't have like the higher bit depth and blah, 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 blah. TIFF is a much better file format, and this is actually the one that I recommend if you plan on compiling your video file in another piece of software that's not Blender, like After Effects or Premiere or something like that, if you put it in TIFF, at least then it will bake or kind of embed your color management, your Filmic settings into the file. It'll also do it for PNG and JPEG and everything, so you won't have any color problems. However, the one I would recommend is OpenEXR. And the reason I recommend it is because we're going to be compiling it into our video file, which means that this Filmic color space, because it's going to be stripped of it when it saves it into an EXR file. But then because we're going to compile it in Blender again, it'll put the Filmic back on and it'll look correct. So very technical, and it's honestly something that I would say is the thing that artists understand the least is file formats, color space, color transforms, what's linear, what's gamma, all that stuff. I would, like, if you had like a pop quiz with like industry veterans and like, what's the difference? Like, what does gamma mean? They'd be like, I have no idea. Nobody knows. It's so technical. But anyways, OpenEXR is the industry standard format for saving files because you can get lossless. You can get, it is lossy by default, basically, I think. You can do multi-layer. You can do 32 bits of color space, which is crazy. We don't actually need that. We're going to go 16-bit. And it just works with everything because it's open source. So it is really fantastic. That's the one we're going to save to. Codec, just go zip. It's lossless. That's fine. And then we'll just hit render. So to render that final animation, we're going to go render animation. And when you do it, it's going to use these settings here to render it. So again, these are the ones that I'm using for mine. 0.03 noise threshold, 8192 for the max samples. And if you want to, if you've got a little bit of extra time, you could make this all the way down to 1 and then double this. Oh, whoops. If you wanted to and you had the extra time. But this will, at least on my machine, it'll do it in about like 12 seconds a frame or something like that. But there you go. It's going to kick that off. And then when you have finished, you will have, let's go to, here it is. You'll have something that looks like this, a big folder of EXRs. Okay. Now, if you tried to open one of these EXRs, you probably realize straight away it might be asking you what software do you want to open this EXR with? Because I don't think Windows will come with a way to automatically open it. So it's going to use Photoshop. You can use other software to open it. But it'll then go like, oh, what's the alpha channel data? And you're like, what? You load it in and then it will look terrible. It looks like, oh no, what happened to my donut? I mentioned when you're saving in EXR, it's not embedding that Filmic color space into it because it's designed basically to be used with other software so that you can use whatever color space you need to on it. So it's going to look terrible, but that's okay because we're going to use Blender to put it back. So you can, if you wanted to, you could do your compile it in here. I actually find it much better to open a new file in Blender. So let's go, let's just open up a new Blender instance. And that way it's like, you can play around with it and you're not going to mess up any of your donut settings or anything like that. So new file here. And then I'm just going to hit video editing on this little startup thing, which you can also do file, new video editing. Okay, so this is the video sequence editor that Blender comes with. Yes, that's right. Blender has a video editor built into it, which is crazy, but there is one. It's not anywhere near as fully fleshed out as Premiere or anything like that, but it's pretty good. For simple things like this, you'll get by just fine. Some people swear by it. Some people edit full videos in the Blender video sequence editor. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I use Premiere for most things, but for stuff like this, it is perfectly fine. So first of all, because it's set to our default of HD and we've got a file format that's completely different sizes, we need to change this to what we had in our previous donut file, right? These ones. So it is 1080 by 1440. Our frame rate, you can change to whatever you want, because that's the good thing. We've saved individual frames. We can make our final video file whatever we want. 24, that's the Hollywood standard for movies. I find it's a little stuttery. I don't really like it. I prefer 30. So we'll go with that. Then let's go and add in our video file. Image sequence. So we're going to go add, image sequence. Then find our folder of stuff. Here it is. And I'm going to hit add image sequence. Ha ha ha. And then play it back. Now, in my case, because of the way I added it, and I did it deliberately just to make the mistake, I was sorting by date modified, and it's gone the opposite direction of my frames. But that's okay, because if I want to, I could reverse reverse the animation by hitting N over here, and then go video, reverse frames, and then that way it's going the correct one. Also, you might find if you've got like empty space on the left and right sides of your donut, the scale values. Just make sure that the scale of this is set to 1, and then that way it'll automatically fit it. Oh, and also make sure that your frames, because we've got 300 frames, whereas this ends at frame 250, want to change that to 300. And now it should play right through. Lovely. All right, now what is up with our colors? Okay, so we need to put the Filmic color space back on it in order to get it back to its correct, what do you call it, transform, what we built it with. So underneath color management, change it from standard to Filmic. All right, much closer, but still not right. What's up? It's because the look, we haven't got a look. Remember we used high contrast? So switch to high contrast, and there we go. And I believe also the exposure we had on our previous one was 0.5, so I'll use the same here, 0.5. You could also adjust it. You don't have to go the exact one. You could also swap to false color if you want to check. Make sure that it's, make sure that it is, nothing is peaking. You haven't got anything that's coming out as too red or anything white. Definitely, if there's a white color in your Filmic false color, then it means that it's peaking. You've lost data. It's clipping, I mean. So don't have that. Anyways, Filmic. All right, so now if we hit play, you can see that it's playing it back. And look at that, it's even got metadata around it. So you can actually see like how long it actually took, the render time of each frame, which is kind of cool. Anyways, now let's do the final output for that video file. So we have to choose the folder where it's going to put our video file. So I usually put it in outside of the frame, so inside frames, and then I just put it here. I call it the name of the folder. So it was like number 1 or number 2, whatever. So you go 2, let's go 6, final animation. I go accept, and then file format. Because we chose new video editor, it's defaulted file format. It's FFmpeg video. Sounds like a weird one. Like what? That's not a file format. It's just like an open, like you can change the containers and all this. It's really good. So you want to keep it at MPEG-4. That'll give you an MP4 file, and then video codec H.264. It's sort of like the, I guess, industry standard. It's the one everyone saves to. I don't know enough about codecs and everything, but it is like, seems to be the de facto everyone wants to go for. And then really simple output quality. I usually just change this from either high quality or perceptually lossless, which means it's almost lossless really. And then, ready? Final video, here we go. Render animation. And this is, of course, going to be much faster because it's not actually rendering our donut file. It's just taking all of those frames as EXRs, and then it's compiling it into one video file to be animated. And we'll just wait for that to finish. And that's it. It finished, which means if you go to your folder, you should see it. There it is, ready? The moment of truth. Double click, and we did it! Da-da-da-da-da-da. The final animation is done. So you can now upload that to the internet, like the Blender Donut subreddit, post it there, get some feedback from the community on what you could do to improve it. And you could do a lot with this tutorial series. For example, you could use this tutorial to make a cinnamon donut. Or a powdered donut, if you like those. A Crower donut, if you're Dutch. A gummy donut, if you followed my old, now outdated Geometry Nodes tutorial. An ice donut, or even something radical, like a holographic sci-fi donut. Yeah, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? And that is, of course, a teaser of an upcoming NFT art collection by me that is going to be due out next year. It's called the Baker's Dozen, and it is 13 one-of-a-kind donut animations. That's just a little teaser I thought I'd drop here because you made it to the end of the little donut series, so why not throw in a little Easter egg that's somewhat relevant. So if you want to be notified when that NFT collection comes out, click the link in the description and you can join a special mailing list that I've set up just for that. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, okay, now what? I just watched that whole donut series. What do you recommend? Like, what's the next, like, what's a logical stepping stone that isn't, I'm not going to like die in the vast gauntlet of tutorials out there? Well, I have a video on that. I discussed it in my podcast. You can click that video there, and I've outlined a curriculum of what I recommend is best after you've finished the donut. What are some tutorials to follow? What's important on your artistic journey? So watch that. But otherwise, congrats, guys. You made it right to the end. Pat yourselves on the back, and I will see you in a future tutorial. Bye.